So I'll start by showing you guys what I'm gonna teach you how to create essentially. So I managed to get the actual asset from Left 4 Dead, the model of the boomer. I rigged it and I applied these physics systems to it. And you can see it has like the jiggly belly and whatever. It's pretty basic setup. There's not too much going on here. It just looks a lot more complicated than it actually is. So um, should be relatively painless. Most of the work comes from the tedious nature of making a physics asset. And one thing I did want to show was this is the rig I made for it. And the reason I want to show this is because it's good to understand why it's made the way it is. So in here, there's a couple extra bones. Obviously, these are just normal bones, weight painted pretty generically, nothing too special. Then these ones are the extra ones, just for like the jiggly bits and whatever. They don't need to be connected, but when you see how the model moves, it's only going to move the sections that it's weight painted to. So it might sound a bit like basic, I guess, but it's an important thing to just know. So if your model's not acting right, not with this one, but in the future, it could just be the way it's weight painted. Because I could mess up certain things and then verts are going to go crazy and whatever. So it's just a good thing to keep in mind, good thing to understand about it going into it. But yes, for starting this out, I do actually have the files that I'll send to you guys that I use to make this.
I did post both the zips in Canvas.
Oh, in Canvas, okay. Uh, I'll also just throw them in the Discord in case somebody wants those too. Um, so with this, when you download them, what you have to do, and I'll just do it on the screen too. So there's two files, one that's called SM Boomer and the other one that's called SM Boomer Anims. Each one both has a FBX file in them, so you just need to extract them to your desktop. But when you start, you want to not here, here, okay.
I could interject that the boomer material looks fucking hilarious. He's just like flattened into a little marble.
Oh yeah. Here, I'll try and show that really quick. I mean, it looks a little weird as a PNG. It looks a bit better as a thing, but yeah, it's kind of weird how they did the eyes and stuff. But yeah, it's all pretty much the whole thing's diffused. There's a bit of normals in there, but it's pretty cool how much they're able to pack into it. But yeah, there's the little marble dude. Okay, so starting out, when you import these, normally you wouldn't have to do it this way, but I was having a problem with it, and I just said, screw it, whatever. I'm just going to show you guys what to do. It's not that complicated. So with the first one, smboomer.fbx, just drag it in, hit import. Let me just check really quick. Yeah, hit import, whatever. Ignore this. It's lying to you. Okay, they have that done. Next, you get the boomer anims, drag that in, do not hit import, go to animations, import only animations, then hit import. Now everything is fine. That's just very important to do. I don't know why there's two of these now, but whatever. It doesn't matter. Okay, so we have everything. This is the boomer skeleton. Everything is pretty much ready to go. And when
Can you
yeah,
do that again?
yeah. What do you want me to show? How to?
How to import just the animations?
Oh, just the animation. Yeah. So you just want to drag it in. Click on this tab that says animations,
okay.
and then this little checkbox. Click that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And that should be it. I don't know, different versions of Unreal might look a little different, but the important thing is just make sure it's only importing the animations. And I think that's it. Okay. And so what we want to do is open the physics asset right here, the orange one, or yeah, I guess it's orange. And what you will see is this. And this is the generated collisions for the bones. I think I kind of talked about it like a week or two ago, where these are essentially similar to collisions for like a mesh, like with the capsule. This is that for each individual bone and how much they're able to be touched within that range to be affected and whatever. So what we want to do with this, you want to click, you want to hit Control A, and you want to delete everything because all of that sucks. It's just bad. Okay, so now we have this, just the basic nothing, essentially. This is completely empty. So you'll want to click here, go down here to bones, show all bones, and it'll have everything up here for you. Now, it also shouldn't be named like this, but that's fine. It's whatever. I don't know if we need it for what we're doing here, but for other stuff when it comes to ragdolls and whatever, what you want to start with is you want to click on the root, and I guess I can just kind of go over this, sort of. To add collisions, you just right-click on the bone you want to put the collision on. You go to Add Shape, and then you'll be able to add shapes. But for the root specifically, only for the root, we want to add a sphere, and we'll just shrink it down a little bit. It doesn't really matter because it's not going to play any part at all. But what we're going to want to do then with this root that's selected, go to Physics Type over here. Make sure you have the Details panel open. And set it to kinematic. Kinematic essentially means it cannot move. It doesn't do anything. But we want that because the way animations are affected with the root, we want it to, I don't know, best way to phrase it. It's kind of like the character's origin point, so it can kind of sync all the bones locations to that root. And so without it, if you're trying to make it go back to like its T-pose or whatever, from a ragdoll, it's not going to know how to do that because it has no reference point. So that's the good thing about having a root bone, is it helps that a lot. Okay, and now with making a physics asset, this is kind of a complicated introduction to doing it, but like this character-wise, because there's a lot of bones here and extra bones, but this is the tedious part I was mentioning before. So what you have to do is for each bone, click, go to Add Shape, and then add a box, sphere, or capsule. Generally, I'm going to pick a capsule, especially for like weird shapes like this. And sometimes it'll do a weird thing. I don't think it's doing it here with this bone, but sometimes it won't have the bone's locations perfect in relation to like the capsule being on top of the bone. That's not a huge deal. You just got to know that like if you put this way out here, how this gets hit is going to affect that bone. So the reason I'm saying that is if it's like a little off and the bone's actually up here, then it's going to act a little different, a little bit weird, but small things, it just might drive you crazy and you won't know why. That's probably why. That's just all I'm trying to say. Okay, so for the pelvis, relatively basic. You can actually click this thing up here, this little cube with the arrows coming out of it to the right of the gizmos, and that'll put it into world orientation. So then you can drag this up and down without having to deal with that. Whoop. That'll make it a little bit easier. But what you want to do is you can scale this just to the size you want, and you can always come back and edit these later, but we will have more bones, so they might make up for certain areas that you'll want to use instead. So you might want to move this later, shrink it down or whatever. So yeah, something like that, just generally. Well, maybe just a little bit bigger. Just try and meet just before the edges, because obviously if it's sticking out, then it's gonna interact when, to the player's perspective, it shouldn't, because the mesh, they're not touching the mesh. So like if you make it like this, character hits this, they're not gonna know what's happening. But if you do it like this, there will be a lot more forgiving, because they think it's like going into the mesh kind of thing. If that made sense, great. If not, it doesn't matter, it's fine. Okay, and so with the rest of these bones, another note to make, Remember, only this one is set to kinematic. The rest of these, keep them on default. They're actually simulated, but keep them on default because this is based on the like the project settings and stuff. But physics simulated, that's actually what we want, but it's default. Anyways, okay. So with the rest of these, it's very tedious. And I'm very sorry, but I didn't make Unreal, so it's not my fault. We just gotta go in here, add shape, add a capsule or a sphere, whatever you want, and then just kind of shape them to the locations that it is. And I'll try and do some of these as fast as I can so we can move on to some of the other parts, but and I do already have one I made, of course, but it should be fine. And with the, you'll kind of discover like, oh, maybe I want to use a sphere for this, or a hand for the, or a cube for this part, and that's all fine. It's kind of what you want to do, what you want to create, how you want it to behave. I guess the biggest thing to keep in mind with it is with spherical stuff. So, like, if I put in a sphere here, anything that touches it, it's kind of gonna go around the sphere. And I know that that's kind of obvious, but the reason I'm using a cylinder here, or capsule, is because it's gonna be sticking out this way, so nothing could accidentally like round over it or under it or whatever. With this, it has this little extension piece, so if there's any gaps in between collision capsules and whatever, it'll kind of make up for that, and it will save you a bit of headache. And then later on when we get to constraints, it'll make it so I can put the constraint here, which is essentially going to say I only want it to rotate from this origin point. But if I put a sphere here, then I'm kind of at its mercy a little bit. I mean, you can bring it to the side of the sphere and change its origin to that point, but it's still, you have less material to work with, I guess is the one way to put it. So yeah, just putting these here. And then I think there is a mirroring system. I don't know how to use it exactly. I guess it's kind of that. So that should work. Oh, but it's going to do constraints, which is kind of annoying. That should be okay. So actually instead, because that's going to kind of make it off-center. You can use that if you want. Just making the constraints, that's kind of annoying. So what I always do, probably not the right way, but it works for me. I'll right click on the one I have. I'll go to copy selected shapes to clipboard, and then I'll go to the other bone I want, and you'll notice you can't paste. Like if I pasted there, it would have gone to the pelvis. What you need to do here is you have to give it a shape, whatever shape, and now that shape's there. Now I can click here on that bone I wanted, and then paste selected shapes from clipboard. And then I can hit delete, and I delete that other collision. But now it's in a much better spot than it was originally. And you can get a lot more technical with this, because if you go into this section, body setup, primitives, this is all the collisions that you're working with, like all the shapes and whatever. And you can get really intricate with these, like with the rotations, just number based. The reason I mention that, because you can obviously go into here and just switch everything from positive to negative from this number to make it a lot more mirrored, essentially. What was I gonna say? I don't remember. Oh, okay. So what you can have too, each bone is not restricted to one capsule or like one collision thing. I can go ahead and just add any other shapes to this, and these are still considered the same thing. Like these are still considered the same asset. That's why I didn't make like another one. And it's good for making more complex shaped collisions, or if you want certain things to affect in a certain way in addition. But it is nice that you can do that, but the better way to do it is make your own custom collisions. That's a whole nother thing, but essentially you model collisions to shape the model exactly, or the way you want it to influence and stuff. That's a whole nother thing. It's a giant pain in the ass, but it's fine. We're not going over that today. Okay, so with the rest of these, also just throwing these in here, I guess. This is going to be a semi-tedious process, as I stated. But just go in here. This is for the belly, and that's just why the hierarchy kind of has a gap here. But going into belly here, you can copy and paste this if you want, but it also kind of doesn't matter because it's not crucial that every bone is the same as the one similar to it. It's not like rigging where you have to get it in the exact position, be the exact size, or else the animation's going to look weird on the other side. It doesn't really matter. It's kind of just how much you want the collision to affect that bone. So if I made this side huge and this side small, it's only going to affect that bone. It's not going to matter on the mirrored side. And so that's just me trying to say you can be kind of messy with it. That doesn't really matter. You don't have to be super, super neat. You can just kind of get it the best you want. And that's also comes to say with the ability to add extra shapes. You can really get things exactly the way you want them, I guess. But for a character like this, it does have a bit of areas where that might be the case. You may want that. Just because obviously like the belly and whatever. I think I did use it for the lower section of the belly on the one I tested. But this is a very complex model to start with, or like a physics asset to start with. But it's okay, because I'm here. Not that that means much, but we'll see how well this goes. Okay, so I almost just want to skip ahead and show my constraint stuff, but it is kind of important to do all these. Again, it's not anything too like you don't need to be too specific with it. You can kind of do whatever you want, especially like with weird shapes like his chest here. I might just use a capsule. I'm pretty sure that's what I did before. I think I just used a capsule and then I rotated it sideways. Yeah, to kind of fill that area a bit better. Another thing you can do is actually modify the radius and the length in here, which can be kind of nice because you can obviously mess it up. But here, you can get it a lot more clean. And sometimes if you, like there's a certain size limit to these, but I guess it's not. Generally, okay. Many times I have imported assets that are not shaped correctly, or like the transforms are not set to Unreal units, essentially. And you'll import them and the bones will be huge, or like the collisions will be huge, and you won't know why. You'll look up everything and people will just yell at you. You won't know why. And you can fix that by going in here manually and tweaking these numbers. But if you tried to scale these here, you'll see it wouldn't work. But the whole reason that's happening in the first place is just because the transforms are, well, not transforms, the scale is wrong for the units of Unreal. So that's just the first way to fix it and something to keep in mind. We'll try and speed through this as best I can. And I have no idea if anybody's actually following along or how long this is going to take everybody else, but oh shoot,
I've been doing it the whole time and I'm at the head.
I am very proud.
Thank you. Just letting you know that's how fast I'm going.
I appreciate it. Yeah, the head, here, I'll just rotate this really quick and the head, I don't think it'll have too many things we need to worry about. Oops. And also the rotations, you don't really need to worry about the, like the negatives and positives. If I rotated this so much that it was like negative 600 on the X, it wouldn't really matter. It's not going to impact anything. The rotation like that isn't going to impact much, at least from what I've encountered. Okay, where is the head? Okay, head and neck. I think, I don't remember. I might have skipped the neck. I'll check really quick. Because sometimes you don't really need to get certain things in there. Yeah, I did skip the neck. So, yeah. Because the clavicles, they're up here. I really wish you could see the bones a bit easier. There might be a way to do that, but it's okay. the bones will kind of make up for that space the neck's in, and you don't really need to add a collision because you can't interact with it anyways. There's already so many other things that are so big next to it that it's not ever going to get used, so you can skip areas like that. I think that's the only real one I can give a example with, but I mean, you can kind of say the same for the spine, but it's the spine. You kind of want it to be able to rotate along every bone, so you obviously wouldn't skip that one. So yeah, for this I used a capsule. Ooh. Just because he has kind of a weird head shape thing going on here. And with this model, you also want to it's kind of hard because I obviously worked with the weight painting and stuff, so I kind of know how this whole thing works. But this like gizzard thing he's got going on, it is part of the head, but the bone doesn't go all the way down here. So, well, the weight painting does, but I'm trying to say the way it rotates, this will go into the model, essentially. And we'll fix that with constraints and putting limitations on it and stuff. But it's something to keep in mind because you might think, okay, well, that's annoying because the player shoots it all the time and they their head like chips down, but they shouldn't do that because this is like fat mass or something, so that wouldn't happen. So you could just not have that have collision, and then obviously if the player shoots it, it's going to hit like the back spine collision. Just something to keep in mind from what I've encountered when working with this, but just for this example, I'll keep it generally just in that area because it doesn't really matter too much for what we're doing here. But yeah, with certain things, like obviously again, you want to make sure it's kind of a bit cleaner. It's where the messing with this part of the actual numbers here comes in better because this is messing up a bit. And I don't want to do this because it's kind of, oh, it doesn't even let me do it. It might scale slightly different than I want. Probably not because the way these bones work, but it should be fine generally. Okay. Yeah, so just keep doing this. Again, I'm sorry. I have no idea how long this is going to take. It is quite a tedious model, but it does kind of pay off for what you learned to do. And, oh, that's the wrong side. It's not difficult, it's just tedious. It's just kind of annoying. And then when we get to the constraint parts and the collision parts, again, it's not hard. Well, the constraints can be a little annoying to tweak, but again, it's mostly just tedious work. So this can take a while. I think the first one I did took me about like 3 hours in total. And that was including getting everything moving. So I'm not sure exactly how long this part took me to take. But yeah, so I'm saying don't be afraid. Everything looks a lot scarier than it actually is. You can do it. I believe in you. So I do want to show probably each part, and definitely I want to show the belly. But with the arms, I'll just work my way down there. Just kind of want to keep it in the same shape. I actually want this down here again. Yeah. And you can hide these. You can right click them, I think. Maybe you can just hit H. Yeah, you can hit H. To get these out of the way. And then if you want them to come back, maybe Alt H? Nope, that is not. Don't hit that button. I think it's, you can just right click and then show all, and they'll come back. So it can be kind of a bit easier to work with, but you also might forget there's actually bones there, or you're trying to shape things in there and you already have a collision that's overlapping a certain section. So I just like to keep it on all the time just to play it safe, I guess, and know where everything is at the same time. Yeah, I think that should be good. And then I'll just throw this in here because there is one thing I want to talk about with the hands and the shape I'm going to use, because kind of like where I was talking about with the roundness of collisions and how certain things can kind of round off of it, or so I'm trying to say, like they can roll over it and it doesn't seem as accurate or what a player would expect when they're interacting with it. So for the hands, instead of using like a capsule like you'd probably expect, I am going to use a box The reason I do this is because there's such a flat spot here and flat spot here. And anytime a player is like touching a wall, like if they were the boomer, of course, they would rather have it be flush against the wall. So when it's actually a flat object like this square or cube, whatever, it will behave that way. But if you have a rounded object, then it's going to be like rounding, like a pen rolling on a table. And you don't really want that. It's just not going to look good. And the model will really never sit still, I guess. Or at least like certain bones won't sit still when they're like interacting. So it's just a good thing to keep in mind, because obviously don't need to limit that to just the hands. You can do it with other ones too. You can do it with the feet, another flat area. But again, it kind of depends on the model. Each one's going to be a bit different, and obviously this one, having the jiggliness, that's going to be a lot different than a generic model. But so I think I'll at least just finish up one side. I mean, the legs, it's kind of the same thing. I'm going to use a capsule for that. I almost always use capsules just because I want things to be a lot longer and give it a little bit of girth here and there. With a sphere, it's going to obviously be too perfect, but with a capsule, it has just enough of the irregularness, even though it's not really the right word for that, but it helps have certain areas be flat, certain areas kind of round at the bottom, you know, that kind of thing. But again, you can always just use more shapes at the same time and just hit it to do the same thing with multiple sections. But it's all kind of what you want to do, how far you want to take it. I don't know in terms of performance if adding more shapes is going to impact, like having several shapes. I mean, you'll definitely have areas that, like if I just copied and pasted, I don't know if that did it. No, it didn't. No, it didn't. Okay, so let's just say I have this. No. Fine. Okay, let's say I have this and it's part of the leg. Obviously, this section's already making up for the collision, so I'm not sure if this is wasting performance because it's also taking up that collision. I'm not sure if that's the case. But again, the best way to do it is to make custom collisions. And I've done that in a few cases. I've done that mainly for hands and smaller objects like that. I've never done it for like an actual character. The biggest problem with those is you can't use complex shapes. It really does not like it. It wants essentially squares and triangles. So you have to make a lot of different pieces and then fuse them together. I kind of wish I could show. I'm not going to show it because it's the whole thing. But it's weird. It's annoying. You'd think you could just model a shape and just throw it in there. Great. Have like a model a foot. There's verts. It's relatively basic, but then it's gonna connect like the front vert to the back and all this weird stuff, and it's not gonna work. It's just annoying, but it's okay. You don't need to do that. You can just rely on the little basic shapes, because that's what I did for the preview, and it worked well enough for me, so it should work well enough for most situations, especially in the procedural realm. And another thing with the foot, same like what I said, the hand. The reason you want this flat is because then it's going to actually be flat on the ground. You might be worried about like, oh, the square, is it's going to be, or like the sharp edge, it's going to poke into things, or it's going to stick out, or whatever. It won't. I promise you. It's not that. It seems a lot more of a problem in the editor than it actually is when you're simulating it. But actually for this, I don't think I used an extra shape, but I'm going to use an extra shape here just to kind of make it look a little bit better. Just right click, capsule. And there will be some things. When we're setting the collisions, it won't act weird. It's not actually going to do anything, but you might get confused because like you can hit enable collisions, disable collisions with certain things. With these, since they're the same one, you'll be able to select them separately, but you won't be able to edit their collision. Like this is lying. That's not true. I think that's the same one. I don't know. But you want it to We'll see when we get there. It's not that big of a deal. It's just worth noting because you might see those collisions aren't setting the way you want it to, and it's just because they're actually the same thing. It's just not telling you that. And I'll also show the belly too. Oh god. This is one of those things, like this bone here, that's not actually telling you where that bone is. Because this bone, if you remember, I don't know if I still have it up, it's actually starting here and sticking out here. So this is actually just the beginning of it. But with the way this is shaped, it makes you think the opposite's true, and that it's connected to the root. So what I actually want to do is drag it a little bit further. Oh, I have the bone selected. Is drag it a little bit further, like here. And again, knowing that I rigged it and I weight painted it, I know where the bones are, how it's going to act from the modeling software to here. And that's just me trying to tell you that it's going to try and trick you and throw you off about certain things. So you just kind of have to watch out for it and just, at the very least, be knowledgeable of its existence to screw you over. Because we all know Unreal loves to do that every chance it gets. It may be fun to use and may be powerful to use, but by God, it could be a little bit more clear on its intentions. But we live with it and we get through it. Okay. This is lower belly? Yeah, lower belly. So this is one where I kind of added another shape here with this one. I mean, I already showed you with the foot, but the reason I did that is because it kind of has this weird, or not weird, like this, I forget what it's called, just like this little sag that comes down. And it does have weight. I'm pretty sure I connect it just to this bone. There might be a little bit on this side for that one, but that's kind of why I wanted to add a bit more collision there. I'm actually just going to use a collision, or a capsule for this part. Oh god, yeah, it's doing that thing again. That's why switching the gizmo to world makes things a lot nicer. Okay, I'm gonna hide some of these too because I can't see a damn thing. Okay. So just scale it around. And I mean, I kind of already said this already, but you can be as dirty as you want with the collision shapes. You'll notice certain things as you're playing around with it in-game, where it's hitting objects or the player's able to hit it in areas you didn't expect, or they're not able to hit it in areas you did expect. So you just play around with it. It's simple enough to obviously shrink it, add more collisions, and since if you add shapes here, like we'll go over these settings in a little bit, but if I add another shape, it already has those settings. So it's not like you have to redo all the settings for this particular bone just because you add another collision type. It's going to have the same thing. So it's not too hard to edit, go back and fix things, make it look nice. You can, again, play with it as much as you want. This is an example of, I can't tell that the collision's actually there because, oh my god, I hit alt. I'm so sorry. Because I hit the bones. And so, hitting show all, now the bones are back. I think that's what you call them. I don't know if you bone collisions or whatever, but so this area, it's a little bit smaller. I mean, you can add a capsule here if you want. It's not too big of a deal. One thing I don't know if I actually said this, but the location of these is not necessarily going to... The weight paint takes priority. So if I put this up here and I hit this, it's going to wiggle that area, of course. But you don't have to make sure you perfectly encapsulate that entire area to ensure it's going to work. In terms of collisions and for the player hitting that location, yeah, you do want that, of course. But it's more of a separate thing. But in terms of how the physics works, you don't need to worry about that too much. It's more just eyeballing it, getting it in the general location, and it will work. But for the more nuanced, specific, I want to hit it this time with this amount of coverage, whatever, then yeah, it'll definitely play some importance there. But also, like, this bone being shaped this way rather than sticking out like this. Doesn't matter. It's just going to impact it differently. It's just going to impact the environment, but it's still going to wiggle the area. It's still going to squish it down. So it's not a big deal. You can kind of play with it, like I said, and get certain areas behaving the way you want. I think, yeah, I'm going to put this one a bit up because I think the weight paint's a little different. Well, not different, but this bone, he doesn't have an even belly. So he's kind of got to play with it. But, yeah, that'll be good. Obviously, you can get a little bit better too. Like, there's certain gaps here. So what you'd really just want to do is make these a bit thicker. You just want to make sure the length isn't going too far, because when you change this scale, or not this scale, this scale, it will change the length a bit. But it's not too bad. You just gotta watch it a little bit. Just do like a full turnaround when you're getting close to the end. Make sure you're covering all the gaps, because things will. And you don't want like an accidental hole right here, and then the player can just shoot through it. You know, just something to keep in mind. Go on, go back. There we go. Okay. I think that's generally everything. Obviously, there's this other side here. So right now, let's just pretend I did the other side. I'm pretty sure there's a button for it to actually mirror the stuff. I don't know what it is. I'm so sorry. But we're just going to suffer together. But with here, in the editor, if you have a bigger monitor, it'll actually just be up here. But if you don't, and you have to use the 1920 by 1080 monitors, then you'll see this little arrow, and right here you'll see simulate and simulate options. Nice thing about simulate options is the area you click on and then go to simulate selected. it'll only impact that area. But if you don't have that and instead you just hit simulate, then it's going to do all of them. Now, right now, nothing is actually working right. And the reason that is because we don't have constraints. Everything's just kind of independent, and you can pick this up, throw it, and it's going to go forever. Because it has nothing to say, it needs to stay there. And if you want to be able to interact with the bones like that, it'll make a lot more sense later, but or it'll be a lot more useful later. You want to go in here, and actually shows you down here. Control, right click, and it will go wherever your cursor is. And you can drop it. Oh, that's weird. Oh, it's in the back. But this is how you interact with things. And again, this is not the best time to show it because it's kind of glitchy. But when you're testing constraints, making sure things are behaving properly or rotating right, then it is very, very useful instead of having to go in game all the time. Okay, I think that's the most part. Why is this? I don't know why it's saying it's locked, but it's not, so it should be fine. Anyways, okay, so with this part, with constraints, very important, very tedious. It is just as tedious as the step before, but is a lot more impactful in different ways, I guess. So the way you can just click it, and you can right click, and you'll see constraints, and you can do it like that. You can select two different things. Whoa, that was the wrong button. You can select two different things or a bunch of things and right click and hit constrain selected bodies. Don't do that because it's going to end up leading to wrong parents and stuff like that. So what you want to do, the first one you click, to my knowledge, the first one you click is the parent, and then the second one is the child. It doesn't actually, it does act that way, but also doesn't. It's kind of weird. Just pretend it works like that and everything will be fine. But so the pelvis, I want the thigh to be a child of the pelvis because I don't want the thigh to move the pelvis. I want the pelvis to move the thigh, just with the way general anatomy works. That's not exactly how it works, but like I said, you just got to pretend. So you click this. What I like to do is either right click here or do it on the screen. Go to constraints, and I know that this is the right thigh. So I'm going to click here. Go to constraints, go down to thigh right, and then it's going to put this here. And this is relative to the origins of each, it's going to do the math to figure out where the middle point would be. And for the most part, when it comes to constraints, that's where you want it, but you might want to, it's kind of like this is the new, this is where it's going to rotate from. This is where this bone is going to rotate from. So that's how you kind of want to place it. So you can place it a little bit different, a little bit down, a little bit here, wherever. And you can get it working the right way, I guess. I don't know if I should show it now. Yeah, I'll just show it now. Okay. So with these, you have in the details panel here, when you click on these, make sure you click on it because it's very easy to lose them. And you want to go down to linear limits and angular limits. Linear limits is how far that bone can move locationally. So on the X, Y, and Z, move away from the parent bone. Angular limits is how it can rotate relative to the parent bone. So for most situations, you're going to want the linear limits locked. You almost never really want that, especially for body stuff, because most stuff just rotates. It doesn't actually like grow and shrink. But when it comes to angular limits, that's where things get a little bit more specific, or just like case-by-case basis kind of thing. But what you want is just to set everything to limited, and it'll kind of show you what's going on. So they're colored, but obviously there's two reds here, so I'll just turn those off. So I don't know if it matters too much about if down is always the twist or up is always whatever. The reason I'm trying to say is because when you put constraints in here, or even working with physics constraints, with blueprints, whatever, you're going to notice that it's pointing different directions for green and red compared to everything else. It's not always a huge deal. You just have to make sure you're messing with the one you want to mess with. So what I'm trying to say is, right now this is representing the twist for that one. But if it started like this, then this would represent that same area. But this is swing 1. So that's just something to keep in mind. They're going to do the same thing. They really don't have anything different about them. They're just named differently. They represent XYZ rotations, of course, but it's just something to keep in mind. It's not a huge deal, but it's good to know, I guess. So for a leg, I don't really want it to move too much this way, especially with this big of a character. So I think, whoa. Also, if you didn't know, to move around like this, hold down right click, WASD, but you can also use your scroll wheel to increase and decrease your speed. I lost it. There we go. Just a bit easier to get around. I'm pretty sure everybody knows that. I'm just throwing it out there in case somebody doesn't. Okay, so for this, you can obviously see this is kind of going that way, and then this one's that way. I think I'm going to put the leg here, because that's a bit easier to work with in this scenario, or even putting it down there, just because I can obviously read this a lot better. This is swinging that way, this is going that way, I guess. So with these, it's going to be kind of hard to show. Maybe it'll work. Most of it's not. No, hang on. Okay, I'm not going to do that just yet. Okay, I'll show you in a second, but that's the basics of what these locations mean. The reason I'm not going to show you just yet is because I want to set up the other constraints, or else it's going to be super distracting with all the bones just melting off of him and flying into the distance. So since I want the thigh bone here to be the parent of shin bone, I click the thigh bone, go into here, constraints, and then shin bone. There it is. I know it should be named calf, but that is my sin to bear. And then here's a good example. It put it in between where it thinks is the middle spot. This is not the middle spot. You might want to put it a little bit more forward because it's kind of like a knee, and that's sort of where the body bends, but it can also be more like in the middle. Again, case-by-case basis based on how you want your characters and whatever. But I could throw this down, throw this upside down, and then it's best to put things just in limited so you can kind of read what's going on. And I'll tell you what these arrows are for too, because you can actually move them in separately. but I need a better example because I barely know how those work. So, yeah, do I want that to go there, front and back? Okay, so this is, so in this scenario, this is actually a decent example. I would want some rotation here because the body can sort of twist like that. Same with up here. I'll go back and do that in a bit, but it's not much. But it wouldn't be enough to be locked. So for this, I would set it to like 5, which is barely anything. But the constraints aren't actually completely restricted to those areas. They can be pushed further. It's just, I don't know if they're actually supposed to do that, but they do when they have enough influence. So setting it to 5, it might seem like, okay, that's next to nothing, but the amount it will be able to push past is probably where you're actually going to want it. So you could put this lower, 1, 2, whatever. I really wouldn't recommend above 5 just because it'll be kind of weird, but yeah, that's just something to keep in mind. And with this, I'll show you in a second once I get this foot done. Shin to, what am I looking for? Constraints. Do the foot. It looks weird. It's okay. Just ignore it. But this is a good example of these are essentially one. They're not two separate things, even though they look two separate things. Just keep that in mind and you will be perfectly fine. Rotate these around. Whoa. And you can actually just mess with the rotations up here. It's obviously going to be a little bit different and annoying, but if you want to be a little bit more specific or make sure your mirrors are right. Because this model, I will say, is not mirrored. It's not actually a mirrored model, which is good and bad. It just makes it annoying because I'll actually hit Alt-H on purpose here. Oh, you can't see it from here. Those toes do not line up. When I was working in Blender, they do not line up perfectly, so this is not a mirrored model, but it's fine. Okay, so go ahead and set this something, whatever. Same thing with the foot. I want a little bit. I'll start with like 5. I might go up to 10 because the foot can rotate a bit better. Actually, I'll just do that now. Yeah, something to keep in mind. Okay, so now since I have this whole thing ready to go, I'm only going to click this area. I could hit simulate, but it's going to mess up everything. So I'm only going to do simulate selected. Nothing happened. Oh no. Oh, I didn't actually hit the button. Hang on. What? What's happening? Oh my god, why? Here's Unreal again. Okay, hang on. What is going on? Why? Why do this to me? Another good note, always save, because this doesn't really auto-save like a blueprint when you compile and whatever, so you can lose everything and be very sad. This is oh wait, why are these sets simulated? I don't know if that's actually going to impact it, but we'll see. Oh, it's switching to simulated. Okay, that's weird. Okay, well, fail safe. And just close it and open it back again and hope everything's fine. Fuck. Okay. What is happening? Okay, this is very strange. I don't know why it's doing that to me. What the fuck? This has never happened to me before, I promise. I'm much more experienced than it seems. Yeah, I don't know why that just set all to kinematic. What the fuck? Actually, I had something like this. I don't remember what it was, though. Okay. Failsafe number 2. Restart the engine. Yeah. I'm very sorry. Okay. Actually, probably should have been monitoring the chat. I'm very sorry. I haven't had it open this whole time. Can't copy face fresh. We can paste overwrite something like that. Yeah. I'm watching the import messed up. Got lost immediate cause of Unreal TK. Just I'm so sorry. Good job, Talon. That's way too much. Oh, and only can actually. Okay. All right. Now I actually have it up so I can actually see if anybody says anything. Please simulate. This is not the right one. It's about to be very happy. I hate my life sometimes. Okay. I don't know what's happening. I don't know why this is happening. Why do this? Whatever. Okay, if this doesn't work in like the next 15 seconds, I'll just go over to my other model where I can just destroy it and show what I'm... Hey, okay, never mind, we're good. Okay, so I simulated just that section because I wanted to rotate properly, whatever, and not have everything mush down. But when I right click and pull this, you can see it actually moves, just those areas. You can't hide the stuff when it's simulating. You have to stop simulating, hide the stuff, and then you can actually play with it. But this is where you can kind of see where things are going to rotate. Like, that does not look good, especially with how this is deforming and stuff. You do not want that. The foot, knees don't bend like that. And that's where those arrows come in. So I'll actually show this first. So with this, what you want to do is you hold down left alt, and then you just drag this. And this is kind of the wall. I don't know what the best like terminology for this is, but that's kind of where it's gonna stop. And so you'll see, I should probably actually show it with just that one. Okay, whatever. Yeah, there we go. It's only gonna rotate. Oh, it's getting stuck. It's not going to go further than that, which is kind of realistic to an extent. I mean, you can obviously needs a little bit more, but that's how you stop it from bending the wrong direction like that. Unsimulate, and then obviously all this kind of needs some tweaking, but a thigh can rotate like that. So let's put this a little bit more, and then I'll check that. Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell because obviously the thigh would influence the rotation from this way and that way. But for the foot, we kind of want the same thing. How does the foot move? Kind of has a... Oh, that's the wrong thing. Kind of has a bit of give. So like that. I'm looking at my own foot, but I have weird feet, so I'm flat-footed. I'm not the best reference. No pictures. So I'll just set this a little bit lower, I guess, and then I'll just play with it. That's good enough. That's good enough for now. We do want a little bit of give here and there, because obviously the character's like up in the air. You want their feet to hang down. I think it can go a little bit further, but it's taking the floor right now. But this is a general good area to have it interacting like that. So now we'll go up to the thigh. Probably, man, I'll actually do this first. I just kind of want to see where this is going. Yeah, that is, it's so messed up. That's okay. It looks worse now just because there's only certain parts simulated, so it's actually not that big a deal. Or certain, like the other.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Give me that.
Mm-hmm.
When you're moving the thigh around, the foot is really floppy.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way to make it like the foot is stiffer or the foot is heavier or something?
Oh yeah, I can show that. So it does flop around a bit. There is a couple ways to fix that. So one way, it kind of depends on your setup and stuff, but angular dampening is going to increase the rotational drag of a section, and this also exists in physics constraints too. It's kind of weird. Sometimes you want to set it really low, sometimes you want to set it really high. So just give an example, I'll set it to 15. So if I, oh, it's because I only hit that thing. Okay. So you can see it kind of like, I don't know what the best word for that is. It puts more drag on it, but...
Yeah, it's like the ankle is stronger. It totally
right.
looks better.
You can also, I'll turn this off. You can also add mass per bone, and this is something you'd want to do. I didn't do it with my version, but It's something you generally want to do. Like I think for my own project I'm working on, I looked up the weight of every body part, and I kept kind of felt weird googling that, so I didn't use my actual Google account for that. But um, each section of the body does weigh differently, so it can impact differently and be influenced by stuff. Oh, it's not going to show it well there. I'll show it a little bit later with a actual elevated part, because working with the foot is gonna keep hitting the ground like that. So, oh well. Okay.
Sorry to interrupt. How do you simulate just one area of the body again?
So you can either hit the constraint that it's on or the bone, and then these
Okay.
double arrows, you click on there, go to simulate options, simulate selected.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And then I guess once you have one of these on, every time you hit simulate, it's gonna use the one you checked or saved or whatever. I didn't really know that until like 10 minutes ago. So that's
Okay.
cool too.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Um, yeah, with these, you just kind of want to play around with it. Obviously, every character can move a bit different. That's still like a little bit much. And this up here, that doesn't look good. I don't really want it to do that. So what that can be part of is where this constraint is. It's not always the case, but sometimes moving it will give a little bit different results. Also, I weight painted this relatively quickly just for the example, so that also could be the case. But once we have the other bones working, because there is other influence of weight painting that other bones have on this particular area, but they're not currently acting because they're not simulated. But yeah, okay. I think this is generally fine. Oof. Now I'm gonna put that physics constraint back. That made it a little messed up. Yeah, that's better. Okay. So yeah, so that's how that works. It's a little bit better. It's just the main thing to remember is the first one you click on is the parent, and the second one is the child. So really just working top down will get you where you want to be. However, don't do that when you're working with this area. Basically, everything below the pelvis that applies, but when you're working with the pelvis, you want to click the bottom, the bone lowest first, and then the one above it second. Then obviously when we're going back down with the shoulder, arm, then this is the parent, this is the child. You can kind of figure that out on your own. It's just something to keep in mind, because working from head down, it'll mess you up. you won't realize what you're doing, or like you won't realize you're making that mistake until it is far too late. So where's the pelvis? This is the pelvis. Is this? Oh, these aren't. Oh, right, constraints. So here, I want to put constraints with the cheek. The constraint. I think that was the right one, right? Right. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So here, I think I can turn this on. Yeah. Move a little bit better. Remember, this is kind of like the orientation point, like where it's going to rotate and stuff. So if you put that a bit further back, it's going to be influenced to wiggle this more. If you put it closer up here, it'll probably be wiggling a lot less, but it might wiggle on the inside more, which would be kind of weird. I don't know what that would look like. But yeah, so you just want that. I'll probably get rid of this. There we go. Again, for rotation stuff, you want to use angular. Set everything limited at first. And some of them locked, of course. I'm just going to rotate like this. There might actually be an importance to having certain ones face a certain way, but, or like the, these are XYZs, of course, so having each one relative to certain areas or how things are positioned, whatever. It might play a role, but I've never really encountered a situation where that seemed to be the case, or at least that's where a solution to my problem lies, but now it should be okay. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, for this, I guess I don't really want to rotate too much like that, so I'll put that about to 5, but I do want to be able to move a little bit left and right. So I'm going to turn 10 back on this one. And you'll notice this kind of makes like a weird shape here. That's why it's nice to just turn these on and off separately when you're editing them, because it's kind of confusing. I don't really know why it does that. It's kind of a pain, but I think it's just trying to say it can move in this general area, but that's also not helpful because the way this is shaped, but it's fine. Okay, so this actually might be good. 45 for this. Let's simulate it and check. No, it's a bit much. Okay, bring that to like 25, and then simulate, and we'll fix this like weird sagginess thing too. It's not a problem. Damn, I guess I actually have to go way more. 15. And this is also going to depend based on your constraints and stuff too, like the locations of them and all that. So this is a little bit better, I think. Okay. Oop, what happened? Oh, it's fine. Okay. So here's how I'll show you how to make it more stiff and not act saggy, I guess. Actually, I'll do this, and then I will hide all, so we can actually see what's going on. There we go. Okay. So what you want is, I'm just on that bone, or I'm on that, whoa, I'm on that constraint for the cheek. We're going to, oh no, I'm not. Hang on. Show all. Give me this. Okay. So the constraint. There we go. Okay. So this is the constraint. This is what we want. What we want to do is we want to scroll down the details panel with the constraint selected. Go to angular motor and linear motor. This is, again, linear motor is the position for how far it can go away. Angular is how much it can rotate relative to its parent thing. So what we want is to turn this from slurp to twist and swing. And then twist and swing, this is kind of where these play a role. If you remember, two of them are named swing and one of them is named twist. So the green one's obviously the twist. So if I check that one, it's only going to be influenced by, it's only going to influence that one. And the swing, it'll influence both of the X, I think these are like X and Y. That's, I guess, a better way to think of it. But you can do them separately. So if you want one rotation to do that and not, it's not too bad. But, and then target orientation, this is, it's kind of like in this orientation right now. That's what 0, 0, 0 is. So you could put this to like 30 or 40. I don't really know why you'd want to, because it's just going to snap to that location, but it doesn't matter too much. It's just, this is the 0, and the strength is how much it's going to go to this orientation. And that's same with the linear, it's the same logic. And velocity, I think it's just how much it resists velocity movement, or how fast it kind of goes back, but this is the strength of resistance, I guess. So right now, if I was to simulate this, you can see it does have a little bit of bounce. It does have a little bit like that, and maybe that's what you want, maybe it's not. You can go in here, if I turn this to like 15, and then I go back, it's not really going to do much, because it doesn't have much to resist with. It doesn't have a lot of strength. But if I go and set this to like 500, and then I simulate it, then you'll see it's much more firm about being in that position. So I can just kind of do that with it, where it'll rock it back and spring back and forth. And the reason it's rotating left and right is because I did not turn on for the swing. So if I turn the swing on, now it's not going to have that rotating. But now I can go in here, actually hide it. Oh, I didn't hit the thing though. Shoot. Oh, well, no, this should be fine. Okay. So now you can see it works exactly the way you'd want it to. So it's pretty realistic, I guess. But when your character's moving around and stuff, it will look a lot better. It's not only when it's being impacted by an object, it's also how fast they're moving and stuff like that. So, or like if they jump, that kind of thing. Yeah, the dampening string math, yep. And this is also where you kind of want to use it for the stomach. You kind of want the same system for that. So with the stomach, though, it's not a child of the pelvis. It's a child of the spine one. So you just want to keep that in mind. You can constrain bones to other stuff. I generally just want to, I I generally like to just follow the hierarchy because it's a lot more reliable in terms of where things should be parented to and stuff. But if I really wanted to put a constraint on this hand to the foot, you could. I don't know what that would look like. I don't know if I want to, but it's just something to keep in mind. You can do that. You can also put multiple constraints on multiple of different objects. You can kind of tell that with like the pelvis. You can have multiple constraints. And because it's the parent, it's not influenced, but everything else is influenced. So that's why you want to do parent-child. Okay, all right. So I'm just going to put a constraint from the spine to the pelvis really quick, because then I can actually use the stomach and it won't fall into the abyss. Okay, so let's do this again. Just a little simple thing. I'd say for the spine, you probably want to have the same orientation. Like I'm always having the yellow pointed this way, the red going that way. You probably want that as you go up with the spine, just so everything's consistent. So if there is anything that does actually affect that and influence its behavior because it's rotated differently, at least it'll all be consistent in the same general location. So it's just something to use as a failsafe when you don't know everything, but you want at least problems to be isolated. It's the best way to give advice with that, I guess. So the spine, well, I'll just put it up here. Obviously, people can bend, kind of weird, but this is also a heavier character, so you don't really want him to bend like a gymnast, of course. I mean, you could if you want, but the main thing is there's going to be like, the mesh is going to be clipping and stuff, and there will be collisions, I'll show you that in a minute, where if it bent more than it's supposed to and it collided with stuff, it would basically glitch out, which I guess is kind of self-explanatory, but something to keep in mind. I'll show you what kind of when we get to that part. You can kind of just make this whatever you want. I have no idea what I set that to for mine. I'm actually going to look because I don't want to play around with that. Oh wait, is that the pelvis and then spine one? Oh, okay. I actually did put it really low. So again, you just got to play with it and you'll see whatever reason I had to do that. Well, it's probably just because the boomer is kind of stiff in the back. Like when you see him in the game, he doesn't have a lot of bending, I guess. So it kind of makes sense why it's so much, but it's also a good thing to show that you do always want to have a little bit in each section. Not always in everything, but even though you really wouldn't want him to twist like that much, you do want to give it a little bit, because if you give it none and you keep it locked, then it's going to feel like a brick wall and something will just feel off. So when you give it a little bit of influence in different locations, it'll feel a little bit better, especially if it's like an impact and they like rock it. And even if the body stretches, you kind of want that because it's like an animation thing. So, and another thing to keep in mind, it's actually a good place to do it too. I could have showed it with the leg, but it's fine. So let's say spine one, I have it so it can rotate like this by 5. That's its limit. And I do that for every single spine. Eventually, that's going to mean that up here, we'll be able to rotate to like 20 or like 30 or something. I'm good at math. No. But in terms of the extra like stretch thing that goes past the limit that you set, so 5, 10, 15, 20, it's just something to keep in mind, because you may not intend for this one to be able to bend that much or like rotate that much. So if it does, you might just need to tone something down, not up here, but maybe down here, or make it less as you go up, that kind of thing. Just in terms of that, I just mean changing this number just a little bit. But you'll see when you play with it yourself, just make these numbers different. Something doesn't look right, turn 2 of these off and just work with the one until that one looks right. Then turn the other one on and just baby steps. Just do it kind of like that. You might want to do each one individually first, then put them all together, and then you kind of work with it that way, and it might problem solve a little bit easier. Okay, but I don't know what's going to happen if I simulate. Yeah, I guess that should have been expected. It's going to be kind of weird. You can kind of see it. It is there, though. It's just the the upper body has so much influence from being simulated like that. And since this is above, well, it's a child of the pelvis in here, because spine 1, everything above it is a child of it. So if I simulate this, it's simulating everything else. So it's not like how good we had it with the lower parts where you could just simulate certain sections, but it's okay. Don't need to worry about that too much. Okay, so with the belly, same thing we did with the cheek. We want to grab the spine, this time not the pelvis, because the cheeks were to the pelvis, this is to the belly, the spine's to the belly. We want to grab the spine, add a constraint, and then add it to each one of these. So I'll just start with lower or upper right, because that's where who the fuck? Oh, this is the upper right, okay, never mind, it's fine. Okay, so with this, same thing, where it kind of is, might need to alter it a little bit. But with this kind of area, to give it more jiggliness, we want to let it rotate in every direction, because we didn't do that with the cheek. But having it be able to twist a little bit might look good. So to start, just so I know what I'm working with, set everything to 5. I know that one's good. So like this one means rotate like this. So obviously I can't really articulate a good motion to show which way it's rotating, like that. So that's what the red one is right now. So it'll jiggle a little bit that way. So I do kind of want that on 5, I think, at least for now. And then lock this, and this obviously like up and down. That's kind of weird. That's kind of going to be like it twisting, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but giving it a little bit can be a good thing. So keeping those set to limited, I'll do that. And then you can test it a little bit, and then it sags, right? Because obviously we didn't give it the springiness effect. I'll go ahead and do the rest of them. They're just like for the belly, just so I can give a really good demonstration of the difference that'll be between this and the cheek, and how much we want it to jiggle and give it that weird like bag of beans feel. I don't know if that was a good terminology, but it's fine. Just that kind of thing. So just setting these up really quick. This one's definitely going to be weird. I didn't set mine up like that, but it should be okay. So set it to this. Just set it to like 5. And since these all they have a little bit of weight paint bleeding into each other bone, so the movement of one will affect the other. It won't like tear it, but it's good to keep in mind for how it's going to behave with the jiggliness. It's might look a little bit different than you expect. So you don't have to be, I guess this goes back to me saying you don't have to be perfect about everything, because everything's going to look weird. It's kind of the point, but it's very different from animation in general, because it's kind of just saying I want this to wiggle, and this is how much I want it to wiggle, and that's it. You don't know where it's going to wiggle, you just don't know it's going to wiggle a lot. So something to keep in mind. Okay, which ones did I do already? I think it was just both the uppers, whatever this one's named. Or I can just click on spine, and then I can see it right here. So I did belly upper and belly upper. Okay, so now belly lower, right click on here, add constraint. Oh, nope, don't do that. Click on spine, and then add constraint to the belly lower. And then put it there. And for the lower ones, we might actually want to give it a little bit more, because it's kind of like affected by gravity kind of thing. And you also notice I'm not really worrying about how these are rotated right now, because I'm giving them basically the same rotation every direction, so it doesn't matter. I mean, they're all going to move generally the same. You can be more careful with it if you want to, but if everything's supposed to move within the same restrictions, then there's no real reason to worry about it. Spine, constraint, and lower right, yeah. Same thing here. It's kind of weird, but it's okay. Limit. Set this to 10. Okay, and then I think if I select all these, yeah, okay. So right now, that's what it all looks like. They're all kind of jiggled together. They don't have much jiggliness though. It's kind of like an empty bag, I guess. So obviously the way we did the cheek, that's the same way we're going to fix this. We're going to the constraints, right? So if you want to select the constraints a lot easier, you can just click on a bone that has it, like the spine, because it's higher in the hierarchy, and you'll see all these here. You can just drag select these, and now you're editing the settings for every single one of the ones you selected, all at the same time. And you'll see like multiple values, whatever. Ignore that. Whatever you change in here will change everything else. So obviously don't want to change the swing limits, but I want them to all have the same twist and swing. So I'm going to go in there, give them twist and swing. I'll just see what that looks like. Just at 50. Nah, it's not much. So I'll go back in here, give it like 300. Simulate. And there we go. We get a little bit of jiggliness. And each one of these are acting in their own, or they're all influenced in their own way, because they're not parented to each other. If I was moving the spine, then they'd all jiggle. And I'll show that with my other one, just because it's not going to take up 3 hours of everybody's time just to recreate something I already can show. But I think a little bit more, because we want a good jiggle. That's what we want. There we go. Like 400 is pretty good. But to give it just a little bit more of something, I like to do the position. I think it was, I'm going to cheat really quick. I forget which one it was. Belly angular. Oh, I didn't do that. Where the fuck did I change it? Oh, fuck. Oh, no. I did do that. This is just an older save. That's right. Okay. So you won't be able to really notice it from the way he is now, but if he was to roll on, or like fall on his back, I'll just show it with this guy. If he falls on his back, get down. You kind of expect this belly to sink a little bit, but it doesn't. So to fix that and to counteract that, we want to mess with the linear limits. And so I am going to give the linear motor to this. However, I'm also going to go back to linear limits up here with the same section we did for the angular limits, but now with the linear limits. I'm going to change all these, set it to something relatively small, because it's going to look really weird if you do it differently. I think this is based on how you scale this character in the world. It's going to influence differently. It's good to turn this on and off just to test things, but I think it'll be okay. Otherwise, just like leaving it there or even turning it off, it's just going to look a little bit different, but it's okay. We're not doing too much here. For this, set it to like 150. Oh my god, it's way more. Like 1,000. Oh yeah, look at that. Hey, hang on, I'll show you a little bit better. Hide all. Okay. Look at that. Look how much better that looks now. Like, just because it has that stretching ability. And it goes right back to where it was, too. And what this will also affect is, like, if a character punched them in the belly, it's going to push in, that kind of thing. You do want to be careful with this, though. It works really well for something like this in this area. But you really wouldn't want to do it for the bone, or, like, the bicep or something, because the whole thing's going to squish in. It's not like you only weight painted the bone of the bicep to be able to squish. So if you had multiple bones in here, one just for the muscle control, then yeah, you could do that. You could give it a little bit of squish like that. But generally you don't want to, just because it's gonna look really weird. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Just giving that a little bit of squish, a little bit of jiggle. You can change up the values to see how much you want it to jiggle a certain way and whatever. So that's pretty much it for the physics constraints. I think I kind of covered all that. There is a bit more I do have to show too. But just to show quickly what the end goal is, or like in terms of building the entire thing, is you'll have it be able to move around like actual body, I guess. And you can jiggle the belly a little bit. Remember the left control, right click, and you can move it. Where you drag it from is going to impact how far you can drag it, of course. So by the head, it'll do that. But if I grab by the leg, I'll be able to do it more because it has more influence. The head doesn't have any, really. But yeah, this is a good reference. Like you can see that doesn't go as far because it doesn't really make sense to. Same with the knees, that kind of thing. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for the phys constraint part. But once you get all that done, easiest way to get it to working as like a character in the game, I found, is just to open a third-person template, and then in your viewport here, just change your mesh or your skeletal mesh here just to the boomer. Just change it. I have 2 here because it was not being nice to me, but it's fine. And then for here, yours is going to look like this animation blueprint, and it's probably going to have that animation blueprint of the Manny thing. I tried to make the animation blueprint work. It was having issues, and I gave up on that because it's not worth the trouble for this. It's very simple, though. Just use animation asset, and then put idle, and then just select the idle one, make sure it's set to looping and playing, and then he'll just obviously be there doing that. So once you have that, another thing I'll show, this is kind of stupid, but this is just how I fixed the issue with the animation blueprint. On the move input here, if you get a reference to your mesh, and then you might need to hit the down arrow for those to pop up, you'll see started and completed. Drag off of started, get the reference to your mesh here, and just get play animation. So when you start input, like you're hitting WASD, you want it to be playing the run forward animation. And then when you complete that, then you want it to play the idle animation again. So it's just a really simple way of getting it so you can actually like move around and see how it's behaving and stuff. But just remember, on started, you want it to walk around and then, or run around, and then for completed, you want it to idle. Just go back to idle. And then it's very simple, but that's just something to keep in mind. Okay, so this is where the last and final like trick of the trade here is, because if you bring your character in there, you'll notice that they're kind of going to act like this. They're just going to immediately, actually no, they're not even going to do that because with your mesh, you have to make sure you include, or you click, where do I get it? Oh, I don't do that. Oh, okay. Wait, what? Oh, that's right. No. Okay, so the bones, I don't think you need to do that because of the physical animation settings. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. I know what I'm doing. Okay. So what you want to do is you want to go into your components tab up here, click add, type in physical animation, and then you'll see this. And just click on it and it'll add it here. I didn't change anything here, but you can if you want. Like the strength multiplier it'll kind of multiply its restrictions it already has. We'll go over those in a bit. But yeah, generally you don't really need to touch this at all. It's just there. But you do want to pull out a reference from it, and you want to look up set skeletal mesh. That's going to pair your skeletal mesh to, or it's going to pair your physical animation to a specific mesh. And I'm pretty sure these can only take on one. So you'd want another physical animation thing or component for another mesh you had in the same blueprint, if for whatever reason you had that. But yeah, you want to set skeletal mesh because that's going to set the data for it and whatever. Okay, and so the next thing you want, get physical animation data again, or full physical animation reference. And then you have 2 kind of options here. Well, you have 2 sources, or 2 tools, I guess. So you can pull off of it and get apply physical animation settings below. What that does, whatever bone you put in here, and that's another thing, this you actually type in. So you have to make sure you're typing the exactly correct bone name for this. So that's pelvis, that is the bone it's going to affect. But what this means, different from this one, because it doesn't have the word below, is it's going to take every bone that is parented to it and all of its children, and it's going to affect those as well. So you can say everything that is connected to the pelvis would be with this one, and you can also include the pelvis, or you can not include the pelvis, it's fine. And then what you're going to want to do after you get that thing is drag off of this and just type make, M-A-K-E, and you'll see make physical animation data, and then you'll get this little box. So with this little box, I don't know if I have the cheat sheet up, but all this stuff acts a little bit different. So it's kind of weird, and you just kind of got to play with it. But you'd think, okay, orientation strength, that's like how much it's going to orientate back to itself. But then that's kind of what angular velocity strength means too, because it's how much it's going to go fast. Whatever. It's just generally, orientation strength is going to be the thing that influences it the most overall. So I generally set that to like 3,500. And then position strength is more like the location, how much it's going to stay in location, so like the linear strength, but of course it's not named that in there. Where is it? Okay, I can't see it. Yeah, so linear limits, angular limits. Angular limits is here correctly, but linear is not. It has max linear force. I don't know. It's just annoying. But anyways, just these are the rough numbers I have for just applying to everything. Now this is all the settings that is going to be applied to every bone that is a child of the pelvis and all their grandchildren. But what you can do is use apply physical animation settings, just that one, the one that doesn't have below. And that will do it to just the bone that you selected. So the reason I did it for this here is I'm applying everything and then I'm changing the bone individually afterwards. I mean, you could do it like, well, I'm going to get the child of spine or spine 2 and do all those for this setting and then go back and just do it for whatever. But anything you put after this is going to be overwritten, but you don't necessarily want to say, okay, I did the pelvis, I gave that to everything. Okay, for the belly ones, I'm going to do spine 1. Don't do that, because spine 1 is also in charge of all this other stuff and it's all going to be influenced. Probably needless to say, but just throwing it out there, just so everybody knows, in case you run into a problem, then that probably would happen. Okay, so another weird thing, local simulation data, it's based on the movements, it'll act a little bit weird. I don't know exactly how that works. It's kind of just how much strength is going to be. I mean, well, there is a reason for it.
Real quick, Matt, you're turning into GLaDOS. Are you running like another process in the background? Your voice is.
Oh, I am. It
Just
might.
like past 30 seconds.
It might be my my internet.
You sound fine now.
Oh, I'm fine now. Okay. Okay. So with the local simulation data, it's one or the other. I can't remember which one it is. I'm pretty sure it's local simulation. If you have these numbers, then it'll be fine. If you turn this off, it's going to be in world simulation now. And those numbers are going to be as if you set them to single digits. So you got to make them much bigger. I don't really know why you would want world or local, and I'm pretty sure that's why local is the default option. But if something's weird and this is unchecked, then that's probably why. Check it back again. Or if you want something to look really weird, maybe put it to world. Because I noticed when I was working with it, if I turned it on for certain bones, it would activate like floppy depressed mode, is what I called it. Because they would still go to their animations, but they would be like really saggy about it, and it was kind of funny. And you can change these independently for each bone. So just throw it out there, just be creative. With this, for the belly ones, every single one of them, because you can pair the same physical animation data thing into each one. I set it all to 0. The reason I did that is because this does slightly override the constraints you built in here, the strength. And the reason you want that is because if you have animations, it's kind of how much, I guess, like, what's the best way to phrase this? These settings, the higher you put them, is like, I don't know a good way to put this, but it's how much it is going to resist the sag. I guess it's going to resist being a ragdoll. So you put this higher numbers, it's going to be that much stronger against being a ragdoll. But if you put this like 0, it's going to ragdoll. It's just going to fall to the ground and be nothing but a puddle. Besides constraints, obviously, it'll stop from being a puddle. But the reason I set these to 0 is because they're children. They don't have anything else connected to them. They are parented by the spine. So putting these all to 0 actually gets a much nicer effect because they have that constraint that makes them wiggle and jiggle. But if I put this resistance on them, they're not going to jiggle as much. They're not really going to have... It's going to lose that effect. So by putting these much lower or to 0, I get that effect back. And I'll show you the difference too. So I did that for each one of these, just connect them in sequence. There's probably a better way to do this. Put it in a for each loop or whatever. It doesn't matter. You're only doing this once, so it kind of doesn't need to be a thing. I mean, you can change these whenever you want since they're a node, but something to keep in mind. Now for this, I just made a function here. All this is, yeah, I think that's it. So I'll just copy this just to show basically what I'm doing. I just made this so I could activate certain parts of them separately, just on a whim, because for animating certain things, you might not want the feet, because then the feet being ragdolled aren't going to work that well. But so instead of setting this to simulate physics, you want to simulate the bones themselves. And it's the same thing based on the spine, and there are some in here that say like set all bodies below or set simulate physics. Same logic applies here. You can't just set it to all of them, but generally I'm going to keep pelvis off because pelvis is kind of important for your animations being in the right location. And I think, I don't know where I put it. I'll show it in this little video thing I made really quick. Yeah, okay. So you'll see here, the pelvis is not simulated right now, and that's why he's staying upright. If the pelvis wasn't simulated right now, he'd be like that, but he'd be like moving across the ground because you're kind of like dragging him around you and whatever. But that's why you want the pelvis to be not simulated, because then your animations will not become a puddle. So something to keep in mind. But the reason you might want to have the pelvis simulated is if you do want the puddle. Sometimes puddle is good, especially if you want it to be like a dead body or something like that. And another crucial thing to point out here, if you've ever struggled with getting characters to get back up after ragdoll because you set your mesh to simulate physics, why is that happening? Because you're simulating the mesh, and the mesh is not the skeleton necessarily. So if you try to put it back, you can't. It's not going to happen. So the way you get around that, applying simulation to the bones themselves. Because this isn't actually like the bones, this is the physics constraints. These are the same thing. They're named the same. You're actually setting individual physics to here. Why is that important? Because when we did the root stuff, it knows to go back to that location because the root is the parent of all the bones. All the bones have a location to go relative to the root. But if you just simulate the mesh with this and you hit simulate mesh or you drag it off, whatever, it's not going to have that at all. So that's why the root is so important. And that's why we set it to kinematic, because similar to why the pelvis isn't simulated during animation, we don't want it to move. We want it to stay there because that's where it needs to be. It's just important. And if you do turn physics on for the root, pretty sure it's going to shoot into the sky like really bad. So don't do that. It's not worth it. Because messing with physics, you can crash real easy. So don't take the risk. Just take my word for it, unless you really want to try it or whatever. But yeah, so I think that should be pretty much it. Once you have all this, then obviously you'll have your character being able to just walk around, and he will jiggle. And notice the stomach too, how, remember I set all those to 0 on purpose. All their strength are at 0, so you can do this. Jumps, obviously there's no jumping animation, but it doesn't matter. And the stomach will jiggle. However, if I go back in here and just bypass all those modifications I made, and just press play, you'll notice the belly sucks now. So that's why you want to change it up and change certain things to have different settings. Because generally, I wouldn't really do this for the pelvis. I like set all these for the pelvis. What I would do is, like for the legs, I want them to have this certain amount of restriction and physics and whatever. Then I would do for the arms, do for the head. I would do it separately. But just for a general thing, especially for like a goopy character kind of like this, giving it to everything is a lot easier. And then obviously setting these after it help fix those little areas you want to be more jiggly with. And I think that's pretty much it. I don't know if anybody has made it this far. Probably not, because there's all those constraints you gotta do, and I'm sorry. But hopefully you'll be able to get to this point. And you'll notice also with like how he runs, like you see he's turning like that. That's not part of the animation, that's part of the physics. It's free stuff. So if you make him spin fast enough, his arm goes out like that and all that, make him jump. Because if I didn't have the physics on right now, you'll see how garbage this looks. Okay, I'm just gonna hit this begin play, just turn it off. Wow, look at that. That sucks. that's why we have the physics. That's why we have the procedural animation. Just turn that back on, and then it is 1,000 times better in every single possible way. Especially the hands not clipping and all that. So it makes it so much better. But yeah, so that's the main thing. I think I covered just about everything. I don't know if anybody had any other problems or if anybody really followed along, because I know this was a lot. It's mostly tedious stuff. There are just separate sections, like setting the bone collision sizes, setting the constraints, and then setting these up. And then there also is this little part where you got to set the animation, but that's obviously that's just for this specific case scenario kind of thing. You wouldn't do that in a normal case. You'd actually have an animation blueprint, but I think it's because of the way I made the rig, it kind of like glitched it out, but I'm pretty sure it's my fault. It's probably nothing to do with having it be the way it is. But yeah,
You were showing the tube guy. Wasn't there another step about making parts of his own body not collide with other parts of his own body?
Oh my god, yeah, that is a good point. I'm so sorry, I forgot about that. Thank you for reminding me. That is also a very crucial part. Okay, so again, this is more tedious though, and you'll have to just check things. So I'll show it here, and then I'll also show it here. So you have your bones here, right? The way I like to start this is, so certain bones, oh my god, I'm sorry, I keep getting like around and around. Bones can collide with other bones. So like this is obviously hitting his side, but I don't really want this hand bone to collide with the wrist bone because that will cause it to glitch out really, really bad. So what we have to do is we go in here and we can enable and disable collisions between bone sections. To start this part, what I like to do is just Control A and no, not delete. You want to hit enable collision. And then you want to grab this. This bone is too close or it's touching or whatever. I click this, disable collision. Now for this bone, I don't want these two colliding either, so I'm going to disable collision. Now you'll see this one and this one are disabling collision because you can tell because it's gray. And this one, but if I hit this one, you can see it's between both because going down the chain like a snake is much easier and much faster for doing this. So you just go down until there, disable collision. So as a general rule of thumb, it's easier with the limbs. You want the each bone next to be disabled with the one before, I guess. So obviously like just this bone. The reason you want that is because there could be instances where they could collide or something, you know. Where it gets a lot more complicated, a lot more annoying is when you're working with like this mess right here. So it's best to just start with the general rule of thumb, grab the spine. Okay, I don't want it to do this, but it's also colliding with this one. So I'm going to click that, I'm going to hit disable collision. And you can control click as many as you want to disable collision, similar to how we enabled collision on all of them. And then I know this part's intersecting here, so I'm going to disable collision and then disable collision. However, it seems like this part and this bottom one are also colliding, so I'm going to disable collision for those ones too. So for this whole thing, like this whole little ring, it's disabled. But also up here, you can see this one is kind of touching there. So I'm going to disable collision there. And what will happen if you don't do this is your character will just kind of freak out on the ground and look way more alive than they should be. And just like spaz out completely. So if you ever see your character doing that, that is more than likely why. Your collisions between certain sections is not disabled when it should be disabled. So going down this thing, same with here, all that. But one area you can get kind of weird with is like here, kind of. I forget where it was for me. But, no, sorry. Because these can move linearly, and nothing else moves linearly besides the belly, these can technically go further. Sometimes you want that to be the case, sometimes you don't. Because obviously, if it's being stopped by this, it's kind of like more realistic, sort of, because it's like being stopped by like the rib cage, kind of, I don't know. where there's like a force there, like a wall blocking it, like there's more body. But if I was to disable the whole spine for the belly would be able to just shoot through, and it would stretch through like he's been hit with a cannonball in a cartoon or something, and then shoots back out. No, but so there are instances where you may want that and may not want that. But the biggest takeaway for the collision thing is if they're touching something else, disable it. Just disable the collision. And you may think, oh, but I wanted the belly to, well, I mean, obviously this is more of a gap, but let's say these were really close. Like, oh, I wanted these to influence each other. I wanted this, when this goes up, it can make it like this wiggle or whatever. You can enable the collision back and see how it behaves, and it might be fine. But it's safer to start with disabling each thing in that way and then working your way back up. But really, once you disable everything touching, it's pretty much done. It will look decent. I mean, I can go in here really quick and I'll show you kind of like a cheat sheet of how I did mine. It might be fine. Yeah, that's pretty good. But like for the belly here, all of this is disabled for me. All of this. Because all this can be influenced. And again, so another important thing to mention with this collision thing, this is not disabling collision for that mesh, or this like this bone. It's just disabling the collision between this bone and this bone. So this is still being able to be hit by stuff, of course. It's just as if the other ones aren't in the way. That's the best way to think about it. So that's why you're able to disable so much or not have anything touch at all, and it's going to be fine. But you want it to touch in some areas, like because I want the bone here to hit that one. I want it to actually feel like there's something in the way, like a mass between the arm and the stomach, because it's going to look better. Yeah, it's generally... Oh, and here's one weird thing you'll see. So these are part of the same section. This is lower belly R for me. If you click one and you click the other, you'll see the other one's still purple. And the rest are gray, because these are basically one object. But you might think, oh, I can't disable this. I click here, and I go here, and I enable collision. Oh no, I disable whatever, it's not working. It's lying to you. Just ignore it, because it's fine. This and this, they're the same thing. You disable for one, you disable for the other. Same with the settings. They're doing the exact same thing. They're purple. They really shouldn't be purple, but they're purple between each other. It doesn't matter. It's fine. I promise. It's okay. But yeah, so just general cheat sheet, like thigh. Foot really isn't... If it hits up here, cool. I don't think it's ever going to have a problem with doing that, but same with the thigh. It's really going to do all that with the stomach. Some of these, like this thigh is never going to hit this section, ever. That's never going to happen. But it wouldn't be a problem mobility-wise if I enabled collision with this section. It's not really a problem, so I'm going to enable it. Just because maybe something interesting can happen. I don't know. But it's like technically the head can't hit the thigh or the head can't hit the foot. But if you run into a situation where the head hits the foot, then you're probably going to want the collision on for that anyways, just because it's going to look cool. It's going to collide actually. So you might as well just enable the collision for things that are far away, even if there's like next to 0% chance. Because if there is that chance and it does happen, and the foot just clips through the head, it's going to suck. So you might as well do it, because it's not going to take any extra time. It's just making sure you don't disable it. That's it. I think that's pretty much it. I mean, for this, generally this whole area, the whole middle section is kind of going to be disabled. The arms, kind of the same thing. Oh, and here's the pec too. So because I had something weird going on. I think it was with the animation. It was just kind of glitching when it was close or something. Could turn this back on and it might be fine, but I think I had a good reason to disable it, but originally it wasn't. So that is a good example to show why you might want to. Okay, I think I covered just about everything.
Which is beautiful because you're just about out of time.
Yeah. I don't know if anybody was able to really follow along that whole process, but...
This is an excellent example of freaking try it on Tuesday so you can ask questions on Thursday.
Right.
You just wait to take your first stab at it until Thursday. You'll have a bad time.
Mm-hmm.
That
And
guy looks so fucking awesome.
thanks. And I did record this whole thing with OBS, so I'll upload that and then put it somewhere so people have this
Probably
reference.
on your YouTube. Because you have that cool site with the other tutorials.
Right, yeah. I'll put it on there, or I was thinking about starting another channel just for teaching stuff, but we'll see about that. But obviously I'll be here on Thursday if anybody has issues. And hopefully by then, definitely before Friday, I'll figure out where I'm going to upload it, but I'll be able to give it to you guys. Yeah. Yeah, the constraints, it's very tedious. The biggest thing with all this, as much as you want to like follow around with how I'm trying to show things, you want to take your time because there's so many like specific rotations and stuff. I know you're not rushing, but it's just be careful. Take it slow. Make it look nice. Just make it look good. If you just run it in there, throw all this stuff in there, okay, rotate, I don't know what I'm doing, the constraints, I'm just going to set everything to 45, it's going to look like shit. It's going to look really bad. Just don't do it. Just take your time, play with it, and it's going to look good. You're going to feel real good about yourself because you're going to learn something. So yeah, there's my 2 cents. Take your time, put a lot of care into it, and this thing is going to look fucking awesome, okay? So hopefully you guys got this.
Well, thank you very much, Matt. Guest lecturer of the day. It's 3:50, so this is totally time to run to the next class. Everyone, try it out. Hopefully get the video so you can like go along slower. And we will see where everyone is on Thursday. And everyone should applaud. Is there an applaud like button?
I think so, in the classroom thing, but that's fine. I'm glad I could help everybody. And anybody needs help anytime, just hit me up either in the chat or a private message, and I'll help you. No problem. All right. See you guys.